Okay, so one of the things I want to talk about just for a couple minutes here is the fact that Darren Lynn Bousman recently said that Spiral is not like any other Saw movie. Or kind of more specifically, the gist of what he said is, do not go into Spiral, the Book of Saw, thinking that you're going to see a typical Saw sequel. And honestly, I feel like that in and of itself deserves a little bit more attention. One of the things that I've talked about extensively on this channel in the past is how even though I am excited to see this new iteration of the Saw franchise, and I've even detailed in my Real Take series how I feel like this could be the answer to the ideas that the Saw franchise is kind of long in the tooth and no longer relevant in the cultural zeitgeist, where this film can almost single-handedly re-energize the brand and give it some new reason to exist, unlike some of the other long-running horror movie franchises like Halloween, that even though that franchise had an amazing resurgence in 2018, I have a lot of problems with that film, and honestly, I don't even see the sequel Halloween Kills or Halloween Ends as going to be that much better. Not to get too far off topic, but I do think it's really interesting having to go all the way back into 2018 and realizing that that movie had to make an entire scene that talked about why anyone should care about that franchise anymore. I mean, yes, Michael Myers is an American hero of classic horror cinema, but doing a nostalgia sequel 40 years later that takes away the continuity of 9 other films, and at the very least 5 different, various branching off narratives that franchise has had over the course of that 40 years, all for the sake of bringing back Michael Myers and Laurie Strode for a nostalgia sequel that kind of builds on everything that the other sequels were trying to do, and at least in my opinion does it worse. You end up with a sequel that just kind of pales in comparison to the overall legacy of the film, that ends up just poking fun at itself and saying that it is no longer relevant in this day and age. And that's kind of true for every single horror-related movie icon, at least at this point. I mean, it's not like they've understood what to do with Freddy or Jason over the last couple of years. Chucky's still going strong, but that's even branching off into 2 different series, and they just finally got someone new to do a Hellraiser reboot. So it does really seem like one of the long-term questions of all of these horror-related movie franchises is, even though we all know they're never going to end, how do they keep relevant? So yeah, even though I do have my hangups with Spiral from the Book of Saw and the organ donor or whatever the story is going to be about, it was really intriguing to sit there and think, they're trying their best to make the series relevant and do something completely new with the franchise. With all of that being said, I have to continue to be 100% honest with you guys. While I'm excited to see the film, I have to admit, if it isn't a Saw film, I wonder what they're going to do to bring me as a Saw fan, a hardcore one at that, back into the fold. I mean, sure, at this point they're guaranteeing that it's going to have a twist ending. They're guaranteeing that it's going to have some version of the Hello Zepp Charlie Clouser score. They're more than guaranteeing that there's going to be some brutal traps throughout the narrative, and they're also suggesting it's going to take place within the timeline of the first 8 movies. All of that is all well and good. In fact, I am championing the idea of doing something completely new while not giving up on the past, because at least as a Saw fan, a hardcore one at that, continuity is the reason that I tune in every single year or 3 years or whatever they want to do another sequel to this franchise. I mean, quite honestly, it's one of the reasons that I've been making videos for the last couple years saying that, I mean, hell, I wouldn't even mind them going direct to DVD if it means that we still have the same continuity and even some of the same returning actors portraying these roles and continuing the story forward. In fact, I want a comic book series, I want a novel series, I want video games, I want whatever they can to continue the story and build these characters that doesn't rely on various actors having to reprise their roles after they've been dead for so long, and obviously continuity starts to get a little bit fuzzy when you realize that that person is a decade older than they were when they died. I mean, it all gets really fuzzy at some point. With all of that being said, and I know this is a little bit rambly because I'm not writing a script for this video, I just have to say, when it comes to this film, what they're going to do and what they've shown us thus far, if it's not going to act like a Saw movie or at least a Saw sequel, then what is it going to be? Well, looking at the footage that we have already, it looks like they're kind of more echoing the concept of Seven, back in the 90s instead of the normal Saw sequel, which makes a lot of sense to me and does make me a little bit excited for the future of this movie and at least the rest of the franchise if they were to kind of jump off this story. For one, the original Saw movie did take a lot from the movie 7 and told its original story, so if we're going back to basics with this movie, it's just going to be a little bit bigger with a little bit more prestige. I'm totally fine with that. In fact, that's exactly what I would want them to do. However, one of the reasons that they're saying that this is not a Saw movie or we shouldn't expect to see a Saw movie on par with one of the sequels is just a clever way of saying that we're just using the brand in order to make a new original concept film that kind of takes place in the same universe and all of that stuff is going to be regulated to the background. You know, at that point, I think we're just going to have to judge the movie as is. And that might be a little hard for me because even though a lot of people want to jump on the Saw sequels, especially the last one, Jigsaw, I have to say that movie gets a lot of props from me because it was trying to live in a world that was set up in the previous 7 films. And even though it was sloppy at times, it did introduce a lot of ideas and concepts that I wanted to see explored in future sequels. But now that they are taking this film, and it's possible that they're just taking the brand name in order to do something completely different that has no real connection to anything that happened in the original series, I don't even know exactly how I would react to that, guys. I really don't. Like, I have to be very honest here. I've said this multiple times across so many videos. One of the best things about the Saw franchise is the characters. Even though the logic and the character progressions and arcs that we see throughout the first 7 and or 8 films is kind of batshit crazy, it still makes sense in the most batshit way possible. And the concept of throwing all of that away just to make a movie under the banner of Saw that has nothing to do with some of the characters and moments and history of the series that's built up at this point just kind of feels like a shame to me. It's kind of a waste, and it's something I really hope they're not doing. So if that's what he means by this isn't really a Saw movie, don't expect to see a Saw movie, don't expect the continuity that you've come to know and love from the franchise, then that's really disappointing to me because I do not come in to watch these movies simply for the gore and traps and everything else like that. That might be a lot of other people, but it's definitely not me. And if that's what they're going to do with this movie, then I'm just going to say it now, I'm not going to pull any punches. I don't want to hate this movie, but I really hope they're not just using a brand name to sell me on something that I would have seen otherwise. I know that this is a little bit of a rant. I just want everyone to know that I am still very excited to see this film. I can't wait for it to come out. I did a video just yesterday talking about, like, when are we going to see it? Are we going to see it in October? I think it's probably going to be more towards January, maybe even going as far into May of 2021, if that is a possibility. Maybe we're going to talk about this later this week about how I don't think it's going to be a VOD release, but one of the reasons I put that at the very end of the video is because at that point I didn't know exactly how well Trolls 2 from Universal did this past weekend. Now, still don't really know exactly how well it did. They're not giving real numbers, but there is something to talk about there, especially when it comes to horror-related movie franchises, what amount of money they can make, but I'm still going to plant my flag and say I don't think it's going to happen. We could talk a lot more about that in a future video. I just wanted to share my thoughts about this, and Darren Lynn Bousman talking about how Spiral isn't going to be your typical Saw franchise film. I hope everyone has enjoyed the video. Tell me in the comment section what your thoughts on this are. I hope everyone would subscribe and like the video, share it out to your friends. Hope everyone is also having a very fantastic day. Hope everyone is safe and healthy. Your loved ones are safe and healthy, especially in these trying times. This is why we're talking about this, just to kind of give some levity in the day and have a little bit of fun talking about things that we absolutely love. Is Spiral going to be a Saw movie? At the end of the day, after all of this, is it really going to matter? I'm not entirely sure. I'm just excited to see another Saw movie. I hope everyone else is as well. Hope everyone's literally having the best day ever, especially in these trying times. It's been real.